Okay, here's a question. How does a 23-year-old amass an impressive portfolio of short-term rental properties and co-hosting opportunities?
I would just start talking to people on the phone, just sharing what I've learned and helping people get started. And then I'd get more questions, more questions. I'm like, let me just make this into a documented process.
Here's how one Airbnb host is pioneering a new co-hosting model and changing the game.
A sophomore year of college, that's when like the real estate light bulb went off. And I was like, okay, this is the business I'm starting, real estate. And then I realized after listening to Bigger Pockets, a million different ways I can go.
You got to meet Bailey Kramer. He turned his years in college into a launching pad for his short-term rental business, and now it is thriving.
Asking questions is good. And I think questioning things is good too, but it's just like the faster you can just start implementing is the faster you're going to get results with literally with anything.
He's wise beyond his years in the short-term rental space. He's making moves. He's making some mistakes. He's learning along the way, and he's having a great time doing it. I'm 29-time Airbnb superhost Jason Muth. I worked in the media business for over 25 years, and in 2016, we started building our Chapter 2 through short-term rentals. Since then, I've welcomed over 5,000 guests and their furry friends to our homes. And we are here to show you how to create a smart stay. Now, on with the show with Bailey Kramer. Let's start with imposter syndrome. Like, I think that's a good spot to start because you're young, you're doing this, you're hustling, but you're doing the work, right? Like, you're not cutting all these corners and, scamming people because like you're legitimate with your portfolio and your coaching program. Older people who did go the traditional route and had their family and kind of found their way into this world afterwards, saying this would be a good second chapter. You don't even know about what the second chapter is going to be in your life, right? When you turn 40, 45, a lot of people have that second chapter. That's where we are right now. How do they react to you as a young hustling entrepreneur who has all this experience? I'm sure that the reactions just run the entire spectrum, right?
Yeah, it definitely runs the entire spectrum. I would say there's like one half of people who embrace it and say, wow, like they realize that times have changed, I guess. And like the only world I know really is like the remote world. So like doing things remotely, it's not a really big deal to me because that's all I've honestly known because I'm 23. But when I talk to a lot of people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever, they're like, you can't do this remotely, or like that is so stupid that you would do like that you'd buy a property remotely without ever seeing it, or that you would buy in this market that you've never been to. It's definitely a mindset shift and realizing that maybe there's some things that we used to not be able to have that we do now. Simple technology that makes things easier. So I definitely get a wide range of reactions. I would say like the younger people that I talk to, they're just like fully on board. There's like, dude, this is sweet. Like this is just another way to get to a desired goal. Some of the older folks are older than me are just like, you can't do as good of a job, or they're kind of just in denial about it. Can't please everybody, but that's just the truth.
But you don't need to please everybody. One of the classic things with marketing is finding your niche and really super serving the niche. I'm sure you teach this of your students with co-hosting and short-term rentals. What's the avatar of the customer that you want to serve? If you're an owner, do you want vacationers? Do you want medium-term rental people? Do you want insurance claims? Do you want people traveling for work? If you are a co-host, what types of clients do you want? Do you want people in vacation markets? Do you want people in urban markets? Do you want people that are going to use their property a lot or not? I mean, like finding your persona is important, and we can get into your coaching program a little bit. During this conversation, I'm guessing you have kind of the gambit of people in the program, but if you were to choose to super serve people in their 20s and 30s, millennials, Gen Z, whatever, that's not a bad thing to do. It's like, then you super serve them and then you become somebody that really can nurture those folks as someone with that wisdom. You're talking to someone right now. I'm well into my 40s. Rory is hanging on his 30s. By the time this comes out, he'll still be hanging on, but not that much longer. And you're in your 20s. And, what I've learned with age is, Bailey, I feel like I'm your age. I feel like I'm younger than you. and you won't know that feeling until you're my age, and you'll say, man, I feel like that 23-year-old guy again. I don't feel any different from you. You look at me as like the old guy, but like we don't feel different from you, like, because we remember all that stuff in our lives. And, I went to a great college, went into the media business afterward, even though I was supposed to go into the medical field, didn't do that. And I found my way into the real estate world, like 7 years ago, right? As the side hustle. And now it's the full-time thing. And we all have our own journeys. But I remember what it was like to be working in your 20s and 30s and 40s. And everything you're describing is not what I was taught. And
Right.
that might be one of the things that are difficult for people in their 40s to understand when they're learning from a coach like yourself.
For sure. For sure. And I've definitely seen, like, with the younger people that I coach, like in their 19-year-old, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, I've just seen, instead of them questioning the things I tell them, they just do it. Like, and it's like, it is crazy to see. I'm not saying that no one in their 30s or 40s comes in like that, but just to generalize my experience with helping different age demographics, the younger people, they don't question it because it's just like, they just get the idea of it. Whereas there's always a little bit of resistance with the people that are in their 30s, 40s, 50s. And I'm like, all right, I can continue to explain and give you like the reason and stuff, but the only thing that's gonna get you the results is by doing it. And that's what I've seen with younger folks. They don't asking questions is good. And I think questioning things is good too, but it's just like, the faster you can just start implementing is the faster you're going to get results with literally with anything. So yeah, I've definitely seen that difference for sure.
Rory, see, the problem is we know too much, right? And we
Yes,
get
100%.
we know too much because we're older, and it gets in our heads, and we're probably more risk averse than someone, early on starting out. Like, what's the worst that could happen when you're 2021 and you screw up? You just do it again, right?
Yep. And, I know once you have a legal training, that's even worse. In law school, you learn all the different ways things could go wrong. And it, really entrenches a risk aversion that I wish that I got out ahead of this before becoming an attorney.
Yeah. Right. You'll love this, Bailey. I mean, like, Rory and I have so many sub-2 conversations. Like, he's like, I just don't understand how this is actually like legal. Like, how are these due on sale clauses not being enacted by these banks? And, Rory, as the legal trainee, runs to all of the job of an attorney, right? Like, I've worked in big corporations. Their job is to not get that corporation sued. Okay. Limit liability. That's what and like, they were always a buzzkill. Like, I was on the sales side. I was a sales manager. Like, we just went head to head with our attorneys. Because like, what do you mean we can't do this? They give you the list of reasons why not. And in sales, you don't like taking no for an answer. Like, you like figuring out what is the pain point and solving it. And when you get a no, you try to rephrase the question, or you try to ask it, in a way that you're going to get that yes. And man, like, the attorneys, they just shut it down. Like, the good attorneys that are entrepreneur focused, and we have actually had them on this podcast. Nick Troxel out of Colorado, that was a great interview that we had, and he is an entrepreneur, works with businesses, and he wants to protect the business, but he also said he wants to give them a way that they might be able to push forward as well. I think that, like, a lot of attorneys take the easy way out, and they say, here's the long list of reasons you can't do this thing. Case closed. Don't email me again. Right. But Bailey, you don't want to hear that. I mean, you're hustling, you're doing all these different creative financing deals. You're coaching people on how to find those properties and maybe not lay money out, and then how to co-host them afterward. So you're navigating this in a very non-traditional way from how we've all been trained our whole lives, right?
Totally. That's what it's all about, going the non-traditional path.
So tell us about your co-hosting business. Like, when did you launch this? How are things going? What are a couple things you've learned along the way?
Totally. So to go back to the story I was sharing before of like reading Rich Dad Poor Dad sophomore year of college, that's when like the real estate light bulb went off. And I was like, okay, this is the business I'm starting, real estate. And then I realized after listening to Bigger Pockets, a million different ways I can go. So the short story of this whole thing is I looked at every avenue, flipping, you name it. And I decided I'm going to go into buying apartment complexes. That's my first site. And it's funny, I don't do any of that now, but that was like my first site that I wanted to go. So again, long story short, I ended up joining like a mastermind group. It wasn't really a coaching program. It's more like a group of like-minded people for apartments. And I just started learning, networking. Like I call it like practicing. I was doing the motions. I just wasn't getting anywhere. Like I was underwriting deals, talking to brokers, the whole thing. Long story short, met somebody in that group who also wanted to get into apartment complexes, but he was kind of going through the same thing I wasn't really getting any progress. And this was a couple months, and anything in real estate's a long game. So I just want to be clear with that. I'm not like, no one should be looking for like a get rich in a couple months. But my goal, going back to it, was I want to be able to finish college, having enough money coming in so I don't have to get a job. And for me, and I think for a lot of people, like $4,000 to $5,000 a month as a baseline, that will do it for most people. At least it would for me. So about a year after I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, so I was in this mastermind group for about 6 to 9 months at this point. I made the switch to single family, partnered up with this guy who had experience, but neither of us had money, credit, or any of that stuff. So what we did is we started doing the cold calling route. We started, that was really a cold calling and texting. We ended up doing 2 fix and flip deals. We did 2 long-term rental deals, and then we bought those. I don't remember the exact time. One of them was cash. We raised from the people in the mastermind group for the money on that one. We did a seller financing. We did a subject to. So I kind of just like I did a wholesale deal. So I was quickly learning all these different strategies from these different properties. Second to the last 2 properties, so 6 total that I bought with this guy, was 2 Airbnbs. So long story short of how I actually got into the co-hosting side was we had these 2 Airbnbs up and running. And I was the one who's operating, doing the Airbnb, the messaging, handling everything, the pricing. And then I was entering into my senior year of college. So at this point, I was making like, I don't know, I made like probably 20,000 ish roughly from the fix and flips, but then dumped some of that into the long-term rentals. So at this point, I still didn't have much money, like $5,000-10,000. And then the short-term rentals were making me a couple $100. The Airbnbs, we weren't doing distribution since they were partner on them. So I was really making like 2,000-ish bucks a month. It wasn't like crazy, but I was like, okay, I've got about 9 to 12 months to get up to 5,000, and then I don't have to get a 9 to 5 job. That was it. So I started posting about my real estate journey from the moment I found Biggerpockets and just sharing what I was learning. So I was doing that as I bought properties too. And then someone actually messaged me on Instagram, funny enough. It was like a friend of a friend, and said, hey, I know someone who needs a co-host for their property. Do you want to do it? And at this point, again, I had 2 Airbnbs up and running. I said, sure. Whatever. So I took over this guy's Airbnb, and the very first, it was already, by the way, this guy, he bought the Airbnb. It was already furnished, turnkey, ready to go. So we just basically pressed live on his new Airbnb listing, and we were making money. So that first month I made like $900. And then I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. Like I didn't do anything for this property. If I can just continue to do that every month and get a couple more of these, this whole college or this whole 9 to 5 thing is like way out of sight. So I got the first taste from there. Then I got another referral like really close after that in the same city. It was like wild. Started doing that one. That was roughly, it was a little bit more money, but just to keep it conservative, same type of numbers, 900 to $1,000 a month. So at this point, I was making like 4,000 roughly dollars a month. And I just saw the future. So at this point, it's December of 2021, and then college, my last semester was starting like January, like 5th or something like that. I get an email from the school that says, hey, you need to meet with your guidance counselor because you like failed a class, because I was so focused on the real estate stuff. You got to meet with them, and then you have to retake and I'm like, I was on academic. I have to like meet all these requirements, and I'm like, all right, I'm done with this thing. So that's when I dropped out of college, texted my parents. They weren't too happy about it, and neither was my girlfriend. And that's when I just started to go all in on the co-hosting side. So that's kind of like the intro to the co-hosting stuff.
How many more classes do you have to take?
So I failed that fall semester. So I failed 2 classes. So I technically had like 5 more plus 2 more. So it was going to be like 2 semesters worth. And the reason why just to be honest, like I got great grades in high school, great grades in college up until the point of this whole real estate stuff. I remember literally sitting in class and I had this two distinct memories from class. I were just like, oh my God. One of them is, it was like a real estate market analysis class. And I just want to say, just because I had 6 properties at this point, I was not an expert. Even at this point, like I know my stuff, but I'm still not on the top of my game. Every year I'm going to keep leveling up. So I just want to be clear there. But the professor, he shares he's leading the market analysis class, and he shares that he's never actually invested in real estate. He's just had his own personal houses before. So I'm like, okay, not that I'm the expert in market analysis, but I feel like I know more than this guy. And that was one thing that just like rubbed me the wrong way. And then the second thing is, I was sitting in this class with this professor, and I don't know his real estate investing experience, but we're learning how to manually calculate how much a mortgage is going to cost and what the payment's going to be. The principal payment's going to be in like 5 years and 3 months. And I get it. Like, I think it's, I don't know, I see some benefit to knowing that stuff, but while he's sharing this information, which I just use the internet to look up and it's easy, I'm getting like major bookings for my Airbnb property. I'm talking like we're like, for my first property, we're charging like $2,000 a night. So we're getting like 6-day reservations for 12 grand coming in, where I'm making, at that time, 10% off of these reservations. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, am I going to handle these reservations, or am I going to learn how to manually calculate these mortgages? So those were 2 things that were like driving me insane that helped me make the decision easier.
You know what's going to happen? You're going to go through your 20s super successful and everything, and you're going to have that moment where everything's either running itself or you have your team of people running things, and you're going to say, man, I want to get that degree. And you're going to finish it up, and you're going to go back and take the classes that don't that you want to take to finish up your degree. You're not going to learn from people that don't know what they're doing, and you'll finish it. You'll have to finish it. Like, your parents are going to want you to finish it, by the way. But I totally get what's happening here. I mean, this is, Rory's got an advanced degree. I went to an Ivy League school. Like, we believe in education, but we've talked so much about how you don't necessarily get the real world skills or the practical skills from all these different types of training. Like, I certainly didn't. I mean, this is a long time ago that I went to school, but like a lot of the things you've talked about, that wasn't taught where I went. And, Rory's been to law school, and Rory and I, how much do we talk about how they don't talk sales in law school, right? They teach you how to be a lawyer.
I mean, it's actually kind of amazing. And I will give them credit. In the 12 years since I've graduated, I've heard that they've become a little bit more entrepreneurial, but they used to, as part of the curriculum, as part of their KPIs, their key performance indicators, they would try to dissuade people from going out and starting their own practices, starting their own firms, being entrepreneurial, because if you joined a firm or, got a government job, that helped with your, their statistics in terms of people who are hired for work. But I think some of it has become a little bit more entrepreneurial, but all the professionals, dentists need to learn how to run a dentist office. Attorneys need to learn how to run a law practice, but that's the piece of education that's missing, which seems like it's a core part of the job.
For sure.
So Bailey, you transitioned from, student doing this stuff on the side to full-time co-host, investor. And then you had a moment where you're like, I should teach other people how to do this. I want to ask, like, what was that inflection point where suddenly you were like, okay, I know my stuff. I need to impart this upon other people. Like, was it your idea, or did people just keep asking you the same questions? You're like, I can make money on this.
Yeah, it was the second one. So like I said, I even started a podcast. I don't do it anymore, but I started a podcast when I was first starting out. Before, like, this was like 7 months before I even landed my first real estate deal, which was a fix and flip. I started my own podcast, and that was just like to share and talk real estate, just what I like to do. So the same thing happened on social media. I've just been doing it for fun, honestly. I find it entertaining, and I like sharing what I'm learning, and people find it interesting too. So the same thing happened with the coasting side. People were like, dude, how are you doing this? Can you teach me? And where it started out was like, yeah, let's hop on a phone call, man. Let's get it going. So I would just start talking to people on the phone. just sharing what I've learned and helping people get started. And then I'd get more questions. I'm like, let me just make this into a documented process. And I did the same thing when I started my podcast. So many people ask me, dude, how do you start a podcast? I took a couple days or whatever, made a podcast course. I was like $20. It wasn't strictly about the money, but I'm like, I like helping people. It's fun talking about it. Let me just make it in a structure that's just organized for everybody. So that's how it started with like, just helping people over the phone. I'm like, all right, let me document some of these things. Then people are like, all right, like I watched your videos now. Now I've got this question. So it's honestly like a very natural evolution of just like compiling information, seeing what people need, and then seeing like the key points that actually make people successful. And that helped me in my coaching business, and just be able to like package it up in a way to help people the easiest way possible, honestly.
I get so many questions now about short-term rentals and podcasting, those two things specifically.
Right.
And, I've spent the past year rebranding because I worked in the media for 25 plus years in various capacities. Some people had no idea what I did. The people I worked with knew exactly what I did. I was a sales manager and director for the past, 13 years at two different big national media companies. And then before that, a bunch of research jobs. Everyone thinks that when you're in the media, you're the person on camera, on the microphone, but there's a lot of jobs behind the scenes. But, when that job ended, I had to really go all in to brand myself in this. You're already branding yourself in this. This is like you hit the ground running and you're doing, you're known for short-term rentals and for coaching and investing. I was known for doing that on the side, like it was known that Rory and I had a couple of properties that we did. I got a lot of questions at work, at my last W-2 job about this. And now in this space, I made a conscious decision to, rebrand me, like both my public persona and just kind of people I talk to. And these conversations come out of the woodwork, and like, I love having them.
Right.
I've never had the impetus to monetize it all. Cause like, I don't really want to do that. Like, I want to monetize what we're doing, and I'm happy to like share the wealth and give more than I take, so I every time I have a conversation with somebody where they're like, hey, I'd love to like chat with you. And who was I just listening to yesterday about the whole pick my brain thing? Like, someone just was like, don't pick people's brains. Like, it's a waste of their time. Like, figure out a way that you can give some value to them. Right. I'm not fully there yet. I'm still willing to have people pick my brain. I have that conversation a lot. Maybe it's because I just like having it. And sometimes the more you say it, the more you feel like you're a confident leader in it. Maybe you've kind of felt that same way yourself, Bailey. But and so many podcasts, so many short-term rental conversations of late, and like, I'm delighted to have them. I just am. It's with neighbors, it's with friends, it's with past coworkers, it's via text, it's via phone call, it's through all the groups, it's everywhere. So somehow I did this rebranding pretty well, right? You only know me as this. I only know you as this.
Right.
And it if anyone's listening, trying to figure out how to become the expert in a field like this, I mean, my advice is, first of all, know your stuff, do it, right? Like, be that person doing it. Don't be the professor that only bought their primary home and that's it, right? I've bought a lot of real estate, sold a few things, and we operate 5 short-term rentals right now. And we have, a commercial space as well. Like, we're doing this stuff. Rory and I are doing it. So like, we have that credibility, number one. But number two, when people ask questions, like, just give. You never know what you're going to get back. You'll get referrals back. You must get referrals all the time, like when you give your time, right?
Totally. Yeah. And the whole like imposter syndrome thing that you're mentioning, and being like actually doing it, it's such a weird and hard concept, especially for people. And then when I started, of like going from people knowing me as like this kid going to college and just whatever, to this is the real estate man or whatever it is. What I realized too is like, no matter where you're at in the journey, you can at least help somebody. Again, not talking monetizing, just like whether you're just posting something you're learning, like I was doing when I was first started, like just from me posting about real estate stuff, people are like, man, wow, this is interesting. I've been actually thinking about real estate too. I just haven't had anyone to talk about it with. And then even when I got my first property, then I was able to help people get their first property. Then I did, 5 properties, and I can help people navigate the difference between what happens with your first one to your 5th one. So there's like, no matter where you're at, there's always something that you could be giving, again, for free, whatever, or paid, but free, and sharing. no matter where you're at in your journey. And I would say like changing that identity from who you are. Maybe you were known as the accountant guy and now you're the real estate guy or whatever, to whoever's listening. It happens so naturally. It's weird. But like, even when I was posting on Facebook, when I was first starting out, I would get random people be like, "Oh, how's the real estate stuff going?" I'm like, "How do you know I'm doing real estate?" And they're like, "Oh, well, I saw your Facebook post." And I'm like, "Well, you never liked any of my posts." No, but I had no idea they saw me as that, because I was kind of in the middle of this identity change, I guess you can call it. But I just realized people notice. It'll happen so naturally, and it gets to a point now where it's just me now. People just know that I'm the real estate guy, but I have not always been the real estate guy. Before I was a real estate guy, I was literally just a college student that didn't know what he was doing. So, and my identity now is going to probably change in a couple of years. I'm not, I'm still going to do real estate. That's my main focus, obviously, but everybody goes through, like, I know Grant Cardone, some people love him, some people hate him, whatever, but he was the sales guy. Then he was a car sales guy. Then he was the sales guy. Then he moved into the real estate. There's so many people that kind of switch. So you kind of just have to continue to share where you're at and let it evolve as it comes.
Mm-hmm. How about any mistakes that you've learned along the way? Like what's one that stands out in your head that you've made a change to your process or your approach as a result?
How much time do we have? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. A lot of mistakes made. What I would say as the biggest one that pops out is like I would say around the world, around the category of partnerships. And this is like in two realms, one with owning properties and then also picking co-hosting clients. So to give the long but short story, I mentioned I bought 6 houses when I was in college, and those were great properties making money. Partnership didn't work out as the dream scenarios always happen. And I don't know, they're very long stories, and I won't get into like all the detail, but at the end of the day, for me, I realized like going back to the reason why I got into real estate, I realized like, okay, I have to pick who I want to work with, and I have to be extra conscious of how that's going to match up with my goals. Because if my whole goal was time freedom to make decisions, and now I'm in a partnership where I can't make decisions anymore, or I have less power, it just doesn't align with my actual goals. So I would say that's, one piece of it. The second piece of it is, as far as like co-hosting clients, not putting all or most of your eggs in one basket and thinking that, oh, you're in a great spot. Because similarly to the the partnerships with buying real estate, I had a co-hosting client. It was more like an investor group, you can call it, that I was co-hosting 15 properties for. And I got to a point where, again, longer story, but I didn't like some things that were going on ethically, legally, all this stuff behind the scenes. So I decided, no matter how much money I could be making from these properties, I'm going to walk away. And while, yes, that technically, I had a financial hit from that, you can technically say, because I missed out on all that potential revenue coming in. That was just a lesson to me, that I was like, okay, don't put all of your eggs or most of your eggs in one basket. Even if you say, wow, like these people, they're looking to buy 10 more this year. I have this gig lined up. That's great. Keep that in your back pocket, but also leverage that into other people, other opportunities. And that's what I advise now when I talk to some people that I help that are like, oh, I met this guy. He has 5 properties. He's looking to buy 5 more this year. Oh, I'm set. I'm like, that's awesome. That's great. But just leverage that experience into getting into different co-hosting gigs or whatever with other people, because you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. I learned that for sure.
Mm-hmm.